Alright, welcome to the Strange North channel. In this video, I'm going to show you a really cool abandoned vintage Boeing 737 passenger plane sitting in a field in rural Alberta. And I'm going to explain why it ended up here. First off, I have to shout out Henry Tenby and his YouTube channel Jetflix. About a month ago, he posted a video where he briefly visited this plane, and that's how I found out about it. And his video has over 100,000 views already. And so I decided to make another video about this plane. First off, I wanted to see it for myself. I actually got permission to walk out on this field and get different angles and closer shots of the aircraft. And I wanted to briefly outline how this massive plane ended up in this field. So this airplane is a 1972 Boeing 737-275, and it was built at the Boeing factory in Renton, Washington. And this particular model is part of the first generation of 737s. This plane entered service in 1979 at Edmonton City Centre Airport with Pacific Western Airlines. This was a Western Canadian airline that was founded in 1946, and they operated successfully for decades. In 1987, this airline merged with Canadian Pacific Airlines and Nordair to form Canadian Airlines International, and this airline was eventually acquired by Air Canada in 2001. And so after being in operation throughout Western Canada for 26 years, this 737 retired from Air Canada service in 2005. It was then displayed for years at the Alberta Aviation Museum in North Central Edmonton. This is a must-visit for fans of aircraft history. This museum is located inside an old World War II hangar built during the early 1940s as part of the British Commonwealth Air Training Program. And this building is now a municipal and provincial heritage site. This museum sits right beside the site of Edmonton's old city centre airport. Yes, at one time the Edmonton region had two major airports, but over time the much larger Edmonton International Airport south of the city developed into Edmonton's primary airport, and the city centre airport officially closed in 2013 after operating for years at a diminished capacity. And this property was set to be redeveloped into a residential area. In July of 2013, the Alberta Aviation Museum was informed that its new property line would not be able to accommodate their large 737 airplane. This aircraft either had to be disassembled and scrapped or moved away from the airport. The decision was made to get the plane running again and fly it to the Villanu Airport, which is about 35 kilometers to the northwest. Back in 2013, there were plans to open a new Alberta Flying Heritage Museum at the Villanu Airport, and this 737 would be a centerpiece of this new facility. Museum volunteers worked tirelessly on the plane for months, and the aircraft had to pass several safety tests before it was able to fly. And this whole process really came down to the wire. In fact, the last test conducted on the plane was the morning of the scheduled flight day. And then finally on Friday, November 29th of 2013, the 737 took off on its last flight with a crowd of onlookers watching it take off. In the cockpit were volunteer pilots Mike Wilson and Tim Siegel. It was a beautiful day, and they said that the flight went very smoothly. It was only about a 12-minute flight from the city centre airport to the Villanu Airport. Another crowd had gathered at the Villanu Airport to watch the airplane touch down. The 737 was then taxied to a farmer's field directly adjacent to the Villanu Airport, where it would await the construction of this new Alberta Flying Heritage Museum. However, this museum never materialized, and this plane has been sitting in this field for the past 11 years. The opening of the museum was partly hindered by the plane being ransacked in 2014, about a year after it landed in Villanu. Sometime between the evening of August 23rd and the morning of August 24th of 2014, multiple parts were stolen from the plane. They not only broke into the plane, but they even stole one of the emergency hatch doors, a piece that would cost between $10,000 and $20,000 to replace. Structural, support, and electrical components were also taken from the aircraft. RCMP and museum officials suspected that the thieves were quite familiar with aircraft, and they were potentially looking to sell these parts outside of North America. The museum had to replace this hatch as it was a safety and security issue, and they claimed that they had to spend money that they didn't really have on extra security at this site, site, and these extra costs were a factor in the museum not expanding to the Villanu location. And in general, the museum has very limited funds and is largely supported by volunteers. And so this vintage 737 passenger plane still sits in this field. And yes, small planes are very common around the Villanu Airport, but nothing as big as a Boeing 737. It's definitely an unusual site for this area. And I found out this plane even shows up on Google Maps as a local landmark, but keep in mind that it sits on private property, and the plane is owned by the Alberta Aviation Museum, and obviously they want to preserve this aircraft, and so there's a concern for vandalism and damage. And it was cool to check out. I'm glad I took a little day trip out to Villanu to see this plane. And as a side note, being in this area really inspired me, and I'm going to do my best to find a private pilot that will take me up in their plane. It would be a lot of fun to make a little video about that. Anyways, that's the story of the 737 passenger plane sitting in this field in rural Alberta. I hope you found this interesting and informative, and if you'd like to watch more of my videos in general, please consider subscribing to my channel. I upload something new at least once a week. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Strange North channel.